about the 200th anniversary of the Congregation of the Mission in the United States. That's the group of priests and brothers that I belong to that staff this wonderful shrine and live here at St. Vincent's, etc. But before we do that, I have just one little story about this wonderful construction up here. I can't help it. I suffered so much with it, and you did too, that we need to laugh about it. You know, they got all the carpeting up, and they're looking at the tiles, and they have to take the tiles up because of this or that. And then he says, we got to clean up and drill this floor, get rid of all this concrete. And I said, oh my God. I said, how long is that going to take? Well, we don't know. And all I could think of, Jesus is going to come before they finish the sanctuary. But they worked steadily, and it came about in due time, in God's time, of course. You know, we humans love to set time, and we love to mark time and say, this is the time. And then God says, well, okay on that, but really, this is really the time. And of course, that's what we're doing when we're celebrating anniversaries, isn't it? We're marking time, human time. And there's nothing, I can't say it enough, there's nothing in your life or in mine that is not in this Eucharist. Everything that has any meaning comes from the Eucharist. And I'll explain that now. We talk about 200 years of the Vincentians. That's an anniversary, huh? And each one of you have an anniversary. We normally call it your birthday. Just another word for an anniversary. Some of you are married and you have an anniversary of when you exchanged vows with each other, huh? So all these markings of time. And what do we do when we mark time, huh? The Eucharist marks time too. It marks the time of God's involvement with humanity, with us. All throughout, since he started, since the beginning of the world, in the Bible, we hear the stories, the tales of God's interweaving momentous times or not so momentous time, God's life, his meaning in humans. Just like your anniversaries and your birthdays. How when you celebrate your birthday, are people celebrated for you when you ask them not to because you're so old that you can't remember your birthday? But they remind you and laugh, and then they tell stories about when you were younger and more or less wise or more or less foolish, and laughs happen. And the same thing happens with anniversaries of people who are married, etc. I remember my mother and father, I would love their anniversaries because the other relatives would gather and they would tell stories about them, you see. And how father met mother at a tavern. And of course, in the, let's see, they got married in 40, right before the war had started, 42, I guess. Yes, because my sister was born in 43. So anyway, well, women just didn't go to taverns, but she was making a delivery, you see, or something like that. But anyway, it went on and on. And so all these wonderful tales of life and the happiness of life. Like when my sister was born, you see, my father was in the military, in the army, and he couldn't get immediately to the hospital, so his brother, my uncle, and his two uncles anyway, said, don't worry, Carl, we'll go up to the hospital and make sure that she has the baby okay, and we'll take care of her, you see. And so on the way to the hospital, there's the tavern. They said, oh my God, we better go in and toast her. We'll be the first to toast the new baby. And so they got a little caught in the tavern, and by the time they got out of the tavern, of course, the baby was born. They didn't know that, but they said, oh my goodness, we better rush to the hospital. And off they went to St. Anthony's Hospital. And it's amazing that they could even find the street, much less the hospital. This is the tale. I only tell the tale, you see. And of course, they got to the floor where my mother was, only to be met by a good Franciscan sister of St. Anthony's Hospital who was tall and broad. And she said, gentlemen, I will help you right to the door. And if you don't, I will give you help from the police that you don't want. And so they never got to see Mother, but I don't think they remembered that part. But this is what life is about. This is an anniversary, and so I tell you the anniversary of the wonderful Vincentians, you see. They came from Italy originally, and they learned Bishop de Burgh, who was made the bishop of the Louisiana Territory. Now this is geography, but that was this whole big swath of land in the United States. And he went to the Vincentians and parents said, I need priests. And the Parisian Vincentians said, go to Italy, we've got some there. And they were convinced, and on it goes. And anyway, so the wonderful Italian Vincentians, being asked by a French bishop to come to his land to be a priest, immediately set off, but on the way they learned French. Only to get to the United States and find out that the new head of the diocese would be in St. Louis, and they needed to know English. And so the tales go on, and they go to Pittsburgh and down the Ohio and stay at Louisville or Bardstown, and they're on boats, and all these tales go on, only to find out that in the years that follow, just like our tales, they establish schools. They establish over 16 seminaries, 3 universities. They're the first bishops of many dioceses, found them, like Bishop John Mary Oden. He was made bishop of Galveston, Houston. What a great diocese, except the diocese at that time was the whole states of Texas and Oklahoma. 1/3 the United States. Well, how did he get around for confirmations? Well, those are tales, you see, and you look up that history. Or the first bishop of Buffalo, who became the first bishop of Toronto, and the beginnings of Niagara University because there was no school, and how it was going to be taken over by the debtors, and all the wonderful tales. It's the same with everybody's life. That's what an anniversary is. It's the meaning of God in our lives, God as he works, and of course, the whole substance, the very foundation, is the foundation of the Eucharist, In the scriptures, like today, we learn about Job and the great faith he had. We learn about Jesus and simplicity. But all of this leads us to Jesus Christ, who says, take and eat, for you are my Jesus Christ in the world today. Take and drink. You are given the grace. You are given God, so that God can give you to others. And so every birthday, every anniversary, every Eucharist, we celebrate God's gift to us and our being given by God to others. It's the meaning of our life. It starts here, and for Catholics, there is no end, because Mary has told us and showed us that the end is in heaven with her and God's family.